To see the slide, please confirm.
Yeah, it looks fine.
Excellent. Excuse me. So, classroom management software, really any classroom management software, the core value of the software is letting teachers determine when and how devices should be used in the classroom. And I don't care what country you go to. I don't care, what language it is. I don't, any classroom, any grade. The primary concern of a teacher when you put devices in the classroom is that device going to become a distraction while I'm up here trying to teach? And I know in certain countries, they're a lot more liberal in the use of time for students and don't restrict a lot of access. In other countries, they restrict a lot of access. But at the end of the day, we don't want those devices to be a distraction. So first and foremost, that's what classroom management is all about, is letting the teacher determine when and how to use those devices in the classroom. On top of that, though, we want to make sure that the software can add value to the education experience and actually truly improve education outcomes. So you can do things like evaluate comprehension by administering quizzes and tests through the tool. You can do real-time summative surveys to see how well students are comprehending material as you're going through it. So you're able to assess, as you're going through the lesson, do they comprehend what I've just covered? Do I need to stop, maybe go back and revisit, or should I go ahead and move forward? So you can actually track that. You can track keywords in real time as they're typing and be alerted to both positive keywords when they're using the right words and using negative words or threatening words. You can be alerted to that as well. And, of course, you can record results and track progress. And you can do it two different ways. One is you record results at the overall class level. How's my class progressing through the material? As well as how's each individual student progressing through the material. And so you can kind of trend it over time and look to see how often students participate. Is their participation rate tied to their grade or how well they're doing in class? So you can actually start to track this and use it to tailor your instruction. You can encourage collaboration by distributing and collecting out assignments. You can set up chat groups or forums, letting students collaborate together and share ideas together. The teacher can actually jump in on those conversations and, maybe throw out a little nugget of information. Hey, did you think about this? Or what happens if you change this one little variable? What does that do to the overall solution? But it allows collaboration, and collaboration in education is incredibly important because having the students learn to work together and share ideas and share knowledge across each other, that's a really important part of education. And then we have an interactive virtual whiteboard. So not everything should be done in written form. Graphical form is obviously preferred in many disciplines. If you think of maths, graphical form is actually much better than trying to type out an equation on a keyboard. Or if you're in chemistry, or if you're in biology, a lot of your sciences, it's actually better to do it graphically than to do it by a keyboard. And the teacher can direct student attention. So by lesson, by class, or by day, the teacher can determine exactly which website and applications you're able to run. So let's say the school allows the students to access 100 domains. So 100 domains the student can, type in and get access to from the school. But in my math class today, I want you to have access to one, and it's a very specific lesson based on what we're going to cover. By restricting it down, what I'm doing is making sure that you're focused on just the material that we should be covering in my class, and you're not working on, your chemistry homework, which is two, periods from now, or you're not, looking at the latest YouTube video from someone, or you're not, looking at other things besides what I'm trying to get you focused on in class. And that's really important to keep you focused on exactly the material. Same thing for an application. I can determine which applications you can run in my class. And if you do have a device that you're allowed to take home, that you're allowed to install your own applications on, perhaps you've installed a game, and that may be absolutely fine, even if it's an education game. But maybe, again, I don't want you running it in my class right at this moment, and so I can restrict the ability to actually run that application in my class. I can remote launch applications and websites. So if you've been in a typical classroom with devices, usually if they don't have any type of classroom management software, what happens is the teacher will put up a website address, a URL address up on the whiteboard or the Promethean board, and then tell all the students to go to a specific website. And if you've actually sat in the class and watched this happen in real time, or if you have kids of your own, you're going to know this very well. It takes kids longer to do things than you think it typically should, right? So there's an actual study that was done by Promethean, as a matter of fact, and I was just meeting with them at BED a couple of weeks ago. An actual study done that says it takes on average of about 5 minutes to get your entire class all to the exact same web page. So for 5 minutes, you're waiting for students to open up their notebook. You're, typing in the URL. They're navigating to it. They've forgotten whatever they needed to do to get there. And so it's just a lot of time. And devices seem to add time to classes instead of reduce time in classes. So by the ability to remote launch a website or remote launch an application, you're actually improving efficiency. You're not having to wait for those students to get there. You can actually push out that URL. It'll open up their default browser and then immediately take them to the page. So you have your entire class now at the right website, ready to proceed on with the lesson in about 30 seconds instead of waiting the 5 minutes. And that's really important. And then there obviously are going to be times, and there's going to be a lot of times, where the device shouldn't be used at all. One of the downsides with devices, especially on the Windows side, is if the device isn't used, a lot of teachers put the device to sleep, put it in hibernate, or ask the student to power it down. Well, that's fine because it obviously can't be used, but then when it's time to use it, right, to actually use it for education, they got to get it out. Now they got to power it up. They got to wake it up out of sleep or hibernate, and that takes, again, time. And, on the Windows side, that can take sometimes significant amount of time. The better way of doing it is just to lock the device. So we have the capability of letting the teacher lock the device. A big lock shows up on the screen. The student can't get out of it. They can't Control-Alt-Delete out of it or get out of it. But it locks the device. It's still running. It's running obviously in low power mode, but it's still running. And then when it's time now to use that device, they can simply unlock it. Again, you don't have to wait for everyone to get there.
Sorry, Jeff. Yeah, I have one question. How is that managed? Is it the software on the machine, or could it be pushed as a group policy?
So the way the software works is actually a peer-to-peer client application. So there's a client that sits on the teacher's side, and it's a kind of heavy client, and then there's a very light client that sits on the student side. That light client that sits on the student side runs as a service under system. So it's not running under user.
So it could be pushed as a group policy just for the administrator to have complete control of which machine has this light client installed?
Exactly. So the entire install can be pushed out. All of the custom settings, all of the license management, all of that can be done by a group policy. And in fact, we provide the group policy templates for you. So once you've got the software in hand, we actually provide all of the templates, and you just take the template over to your AD, Azure AD machine, open it up, and you'll see all of the things that you can configure and manage straight from our templates and be able to put that into an OU and send it out.
Okay. Cool. Well, it was just a cool question.
Yeah. Not a problem. Moving forward really quick, on the middle part of the slide just shows you, again, this is a peer-to-peer application. On the Windows side today, we support Windows and Chrome. So we do have a Chrome teacher, we have a Windows teacher, and then on the student side, we support Windows, Android, and Chrome today. So you can actually have a mixed environment. A Windows teacher can be controlling students running Windows, Android, and Chrome all at the same time. A Chrome teacher can control a Windows or Android or Chrome student as well. So you're able to actually have mixed environments. If you have a BYOD environment, you can support that as well. On the Chrome side, just one other quick thing about it, since you were asking about Active Directory management. On the Chrome side, you can actually manage the entire experience through the Google Management Console. So the Google Management Console has recently gotten a nice little upgrade, and we're very happy about that, actually, to where you can manage extensions and applications through the Google Management Console. And so you can actually manage the entire configuration on the Chrome side very easily as well. Right-hand side, really quick for IT admins, if there is a school IT admin and they don't have, a way of kind of managing their environment today, if they're not using, Intune by Microsoft, or if they're not using SCCM or another
Touchpoint
like that. Yeah, or Touchpoint Manager. If they're not using that today, we offer a kind of a lightweight version of that. So the ability to push out, Windows software. It only works on the Windows side, but you have the ability to push out Windows MSI or executables, remote deploy those. You can remote push updates. You can set security policies. So it's at least something to allow some of the smaller schools specifically an easier way to manage their environment without having to touch every PC. So what's the customer value proposition? Again, as you're talking to these schools, I think this is really important to point out. For students, again, we want devices not to be a distraction. So for students, we want to keep them focused on the content. We also want it to be very easy for them to ask for help. And that's very important in our solution. When you see the solution, there's actually a lifeline button. And so there's a lot of students, especially today, and it's getting worse instead of better, but there's a lot of students who are introverts, right? They don't want to raise their hand. They don't want to tell everyone else in the class they don't understand something because it's embarrassing. And that's a detriment, unfortunately. And so through the tool, you can actually throw a lifeline by clicking on this lifeline button from the student to the teacher, and then you say, I need help. And it's a very private and secure way. They don't have to tell everyone else in the class they don't get it. And then the teacher can help them. And we see that as a very big benefit of having devices and education software in the class, is giving a voice to those students who are otherwise too shy to have a voice of their own. For IT managers, it's incredibly easy to install and configure. If you're just setting it up for one classroom, for 30 students, you can have the entire thing set up in about 5 minutes. It takes literally no time at all. Or if you have a very complex setup, we can work with a very complex setup. And it seems like every school I work with has a very complex setup. But you can have teachers on one subnet where, it's maybe a more open subnet. You can have students on another subnet and have the software bridge those two subnets. We support that. You may have guests coming in with their own device on a third subnet, which is a guest network. You can incorporate that into it as well. So we try to allow the software to be customized as much as possible to fit all of those different types of configurations and environments. For teachers, question?
One might be this might be an odd question. But how would this translate into a van situation? If we say the school is on, let's see, exhibition at a museum, they are tablet-based Chrome OS users, could they hook up over van like the 4G?
No, so the one thing, because it's peer-to-peer, right, and it's this peer-to-peer client, is you have to be within the same network. Now, what you can do is you can bring them in via VPN.
Okay. So you have no problem with the VPN client controlling the data?
No, none whatsoever. It can be a little slow on a few of the features just because it has to navigate that VPN each time, right? Because you're basically tunneling in. So features like streaming of video aren't recommended. But all of the other features, like the ability to send files, the ability to send tests and surveys and questions and all of that works great over VPN. And we have a lot of schools, specifically in Australia, as a matter of fact, where they have all these bush schools out in the middle of nowhere in Western Australia. They're all using the software VPN to get into the school.
Okay. Yeah, it was just top of mind question. Yeah, sorry, just carry on, man.
Oh, no worries. And you're thinking. I like how you're thinking about through this. So don't hesitate to interrupt. That's great. I like this conversation. For teachers, harness the technology. Don't compete with it. Again, don't let it be a distraction. Keeping students focused and engaged. And then for administrators, these are usually the people who spend the money, right? They're the ones who want to make sure that they're getting some type of return on investment. And this is the downside right now of technology in education, is that a lot of schools around the world have bought a lot of technology, and then they find that they don't use it, right? And there's a lot of now schools questioning on, did they get a return on that investment? Should they invest further in technology? And so what we want to do is help to show administrators that they are actually getting a return, and so they can actually run reports from the tool to show how often the devices are being used, how often applications are being used. They can certainly open up the class reports that are being automatically generated and, see participation rates and see which classes are using the software. So again, we're trying to show at least the administrators that they are getting a return and trying to improve education outcomes. So how do we compare against everyone else? So from a feature set point of view and from a language point of view, we offer the most features across the most languages of any other solution out there. Right now we're localized in 27 different languages. We're deployed in every legally allowable country in the world. And in fact, I know we're in a couple of countries that we're not supposed to be that got gray marketed in. But we really are, in every place that we possibly could be. And that's really important from us. And it's not just that we offer,
Can I interrupt you quickly, Charles?
Yes. Yes.
What about the Danish language? How difficult is it to get it in a Danish version? Because as I understand right now, you don't have it in a Danish version. You have it in Swedish and Norwegian, but not in a Danish.
I believe we actually do have it in Danish for the classroom management software. I don't think we have the rest of SchoolPak in Danish. I'll go back and look, but I'm pretty sure I saw that it was already localized in Danish.
Yes, that will have a big impact in what grades we will be able to sell this to, because in fairness, actually the Danish students are already starting to learn English in first and second grade now. So that's amazing in itself. But it will still require some understanding of reading English before being able to utilize it completely. So it'll mean for us that some classes we can support if it's not in Danish, which of course would mean less so of
Sure. Sure. Well, let me go back and verify that. I'll follow up as soon as we're off this call, and I'll go pull my latest language list. If it's not, it usually takes us about 8 to 12 weeks to get a language localized. So it's not a huge long time, right? It's not years that you have to wait, but it is, 2 to 3 months.
Okay. Well, our goal is that we'll start hunting schools already now, because they have to buy the PCs and maybe the SchoolPaks as well before the end of second quarter, because that's the schools in Denmark purchase their machines just before the summer break and implement it during the summer, and after the summer vacation they start to use it. So of course that means that we won't be able to meet that goal, but we'll be able to sell it afterwards and again next year. This is not a one-year deal. This is something we want to do on a long-term basis.
Well, good. I'm glad, because a lot of these engagements really are very long-term. So, but yeah, I'll follow up immediately after we get off this call, and I'll let you know by the end of my day. So,
thanks.
From an MSRP point of view, we're actually our list price is actually cheaper. Just list price is actually cheaper than our competitors sell at their sale price. So a perfect example of this is the number one classroom management software in the world is LandSchool. They're owned by Lenovo. Their price, their sale price, is higher than our MSRP. And that's really important to understand, and it's one of the things that we see is that you don't have to give away the software. You don't. You can make money on the software. In fact, that's why we have it. And our competitors are making a lot of money on their software. So Lenovo does a really good job. Radix is almost out of the market now. They've kind of dropped out. They were replaced kind of by Impero, and I don't know if you guys know the Impero guys. They're local in Europe. The Impero team is on their last legs. They've defaulted now on their third major loan, and so we're not sure how long they're going to be around. But, really, there's a lot of classroom management type software out there. You don't have to give it away, though. All of the sale prices are certainly much higher than even what we list as our MSRP. And then, of course, we give very good discounts. The other thing to know about the license is that it's a perpetual license. You buy it once, you own that version for life. So right now we're shipping version 12 of the software. We've been shipping it for just a little over a year. We intend to ship it for about 2 more years, and then we'll roll to the next version, which will actually be version 14. We won't do 13 because people are superstitious, so we'll go to 14. And when version 14 comes out, you as a customer, if you've already bought the software, you have kind of 2 options. One is you can still stay on 12 and use it. You won't get any more updates, but you can still use version 12 for the rest of your life. Or you can upgrade to version 14 at that time, and we offer a very reasonable upgrade price. So it's down in the 3 to 4 euro price. So it's not very expensive to upgrade. And then you own version 14 for life, and then you're entitled to all updates to version 14. So we try to make it as easy as possible. It's not an annual subscription. It's not that the school has to lay out a huge chunk of money at the beginning of every school year to keep using the software. They buy it, and then they can use it, for several years. And then finally, we do support, like I said, a very large BYOD environment. We support Android, Windows, and Chrome. You will notice that the odd one that's obviously not on this list is Mac or iPad. We used to actually support iOS and the Mac operating system. Apple has made a change recently. So when they released iOS 9.3 and then they released separately iOS 10, they actually broke classroom management software for all competitors of theirs. So they turned off a whole bunch of features that used to exist, and they've now reserved it just for themselves. So we no longer right now have the capability of supporting iOS, and anyone else that says they do really can't at the moment. We're waiting for Apple. We've all petitioned Apple to allow us to use those API calls again. But until they do, iOS is just not something that is supported today. All right, so last thing, and then I'll go into a functioning demo. This just shows you that there is obviously different features available via different operating systems. All operating systems are not created equal, as I'm sure you guys are probably aware. Windows exposes the most. Windows allows you to do the most. You can have the most control and maintenance over Windows. So, obviously you can do a lot of things on the Windows side. We do support a thin client or a VDI environment. So if you're running Citrix or running a terminal services environment, we can support that. It doesn't quite have all the same features as Windows, but it's pretty close. Chrome, if you'll notice, is actually very close to Windows. The features that we can't support yet on Chrome today are features that actually require a local hard drive. And it's not just some type of local hard drive. It actually has to be a significant local hard drive with a good amount of memory and a good processor speed, which most Chromes don't have at the moment. But we also know that as Chrome expands out to start to support Android apps and try and kind of move up the requirement to become more of a PC, or of a true laptop, we're actually going to be getting some of these features. And so we already know what's on the Chromium OS roadmap, and things like Language Lab and the interactive whiteboard will actually be coming out later this year as soon as Chrome starts to support those. So, Chrome, honestly, is going to continue to almost be on par, or get very close to being on par with Windows as far as our feature set is concerned.
Okay. What about Windows 10 Cloud? Are you going to have a universal app that could go into this?
So Windows 10, we have a teacher version that is what's called a universal app or a Metro app, modern UI app. So we have that today. The student doesn't require that because there's really no student UI, right? The student client is running in the background. It's this kind of background hidden service that's running. So it doesn't have to be a modern UI solution. The teacher, though, we do. We offer a complete modern UI solution. You go to the Microsoft Store, you download it, you enter in your license key, and you're ready to go.
Yeah, because I'm thinking down the line, if Windows 10 Cloud Chrome-like operation system will be announced this year, I'm thinking that most of the people have doubts about Chrome OS would be jumping ships for the Windows 10 Cloud solution. And we would like to be ready if that happens.
Yeah, no, yeah, so totally, because obviously we've had the HP Stream product, which is kind of a hybrid cloud local solution, limited local hard drive, a lot of cloud usage. We work on Stream devices today, and in fact I have several schools who are running Classroom Manager within a Stream environment, and it works just fine. But yeah, we're absolutely well in step with Microsoft and what's coming down the road, their roadmap for Windows 10.
I would be surprised if we wasn't.
I would be too, actually. All right, so let me go ahead and stop for just a moment, and like I said, I'll send you guys these slides so you can see them. But let me jump into actually a functioning demo here, and what you're going to see here is I have running right now on a Windows 7 machine because a lot of schools are still running Windows 7. But this is the teacher component of the solution. So again, two clients are running at the same time. One is the teacher side, and it's a very heavy UI-driven client. And then over here on my Windows 8 machine, I have a student client running. And you'll notice that there's actually nothing on the screen, right? It looks just like a normal desktop. But in the background down here, it's actually running. And it's this little thing down here called the HP Classroom Manager client. And it's the only thing that's actually truly running. It's a service. They can't go in and stop it. They can't go in and interact with it, really. But it's kind of running in the background. The only interaction that a student would ever really have with that client is if you provide the student what's called the client list. So let's say they're in different classes all day long, and they move from one class to the next to the next. You can actually push down via an OU. You can push down this thing called the class list to where the student would click on this little icon, and they would then have another line up here that says your class list, and they would click on class list to see which classes are available to them to join. That would be their only UI interaction. We try to keep it as minimal as possible because really it's not about the students using Classroom Manager, it's more about the teacher using Classroom Manager, right? And so very small client, again, sitting on the student side, running under system so that they can't do anything with it. So let me jump really quick back over to the teacher side. So the teacher, again, you're going to have your class list as well. And so teachers don't typically teach the same exact thing every period or every hour. So, if you're a math teacher, I love to use math because I come out of the HP Calculator team. And if you're a math teacher, you may teach algebra, you may teach geometry, you may teach trigonometry at different periods. So based on what you're teaching, you can have a different class created for that. So if I have, time for trigonometry, I start my trigonometry class. My students who have their class list join trigonometry, and then we're able to, be in a secure session together. And the interesting thing, and you can talk to schools about this because this is really important, it's truly a secure relationship gets established between the teacher and the students. An actual secure certificate gets passed back and forth so that all the information is encrypted back and forth between the student and the teacher. And that's really important for privacy and for security. Nobody else can, monitor to see what the test is going to be, ahead of time and be able to hack into that. So it's really important that it's a secure communication line between the two. The other thing that's important because of that secure certificate is instead of bombarding everyone with broadcast network traffic, overwhelming local school, LAN, instead what you can do is it's directed traffic, and so you're not overwhelming everyone because it knows exactly which machines to target with the information because that secure certificate, again, lets it bypass machines that haven't set up a secure relationship. So we're not just broadcasting it out to everyone and fulfilling, filling up the entire pipeline. So by default, the software ships with this classroom called eval. And so I have actually a student waiting to join my eval class. So I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. It's going to go out now, and it's going to find that student. And if it finds a student, it's going to ask the student if they want to register. Now, registration is doing nothing but linking a student to a device for that period. Because, the teachers don't care which device you have, and if you're not using the same device every day, let's say, you're putting devices in a charging cart, and the next day you come in, you may not grab the same device out of the charging cart. That's fine, because we don't care which device you have from the teacher side. We just want to know how the student is progressing through the material. So linking a student to a device is through registration. So you click on register. I'm going to jump over to the teacher or to the student side. You'll notice on the student side they get a pop-up, and so they're asked to enter in some basic information. And the school, by the way, can determine what information to gather from the student. They can just gather the first initial and the last name. They can just gather the last name. They can just gather the user ID, their login ID. So there's a lot of things that they can just gather from the student to know who they are. But that's just linking really a student to a device. Now you'll notice it's got the client name, but it's also got the student name, and now I can go on with the class. It will ask me if I would like to save that class registration. If you save the class registration, you can do a couple of things. One, you can just determine who's using which device, and you kind of have a record of that, and a lot of schools like to have that. And so they save it as either a CSV, HTML, or XML file. Other schools, though, actually take this file, and depending on their student information system, like if they're using something like PowerSchool or Blackboard, you can actually import the CSV file in. Because the CSV file is just a flat file, comma delimited file, a lot of the student information systems today will actually accept that file format, let you import it in, and now you've automatically taken attendance at the same time you've asked the students to register. So that's an additional value add by linking the output of this software into another piece of software that you may already be using at the school. After you saved it, and I'm going to go ahead and cancel it out, you get to see your list of students. And you can look at your list of students two different ways. One, you can see them just in a long list alphabetically, and so you can see exactly who's in your class. Or you can see them via avatar, like a headshot. And then you can move them around. So if you have your students seated in a kind of a seating chart where they have to sit in the same seat every day, you can actually move them around and drag them around, and you have all your students, seated on the screen exactly how they're seated in the classroom. So that when you look down on the screen and you look up from the screen, they're a mirror image of each other. So they represent each other, and you know exactly where each student is. And of course, if then a student doesn't show up on the screen, but is sitting in your class, they haven't joined your class, right? They haven't started their machine. They're, not in the actual software. And then you can, quickly identify that without having to guess. There is one great thing about keeping it or looking at the detail side of the equation, which is if you have a student that's running a mobile device, so if they're running a laptop as an example, you can actually see next to their name their battery status. So it'll tell you at a quick glance the battery status of every student. It will also tell you their Wi-Fi signal strength. So if you're a teacher and you know that you have a test coming up at the bottom of the hour, you could quickly look at your entire class to see if any of the devices are going to interrupt that test because they're going to run out of battery. So if any of the devices show up as red because they don't have, enough battery, they're basically under 20%, you can actually have them plug in or change out the device before it becomes test time, so that they're not interrupting class because they've ran out of battery life halfway through the test. Because not only is that bad for the student taking the test, but it of course disrupts the entire class at the same time. So the ability to see very quickly the battery life and the Wi-Fi signal strength is really important with our software. Another feature that you have is the ability to monitor in near real time what the students are doing on their screens. And so this is actually a thumbnail screen capture. It happens every 2 seconds, and so every 2 seconds there's a thumbnail screen capture taken off the student's device and then sent to the teacher. We're not doing live streaming video at this point because that would take up a lot of bandwidth, right? And we don't want to take up a lot of bandwidth. So it's this nice little thumbnail screen capture that gives you a look at what the student's working on. But let's say something has caught your eye. The student is either confused, they're working on something they're not supposed to be working on, or maybe they're writing a love letter to their boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever that happens to be. You can actually mouse over their screen And now you get a better view of exactly what they're working on. On that mouse over screen, it's going to increase the refresh rate of that thumbnail screen capture from every 2 seconds to every half second. So now you're getting an almost real-time look at exactly what that student's working on. Let's say that student is really struggling. They're off in the weeds. You can tell that they just haven't grasped the concept. You could actually double-click now on their screen and now take over remote control of their device from your system. And this, by the way, works on both Chrome and Windows. So now you can actually remote control into the device and get the student back on track. You can type messages back and forth with them. You can open up their microphone and have a conversation with them using your microphone on your device to talk to them, and they're using the microphone on their device, so you can talk back and forth. But you can actually work with them through the tool remotely using a remote control session. So you get them, kind of back on track, or you answer the question, make sure that whatever obstacle it is that's preventing them from being successful, you kind of get them where they're supposed to be. And then as soon as you're done, all you have to do is simply click out of it. You close that window, and now it goes back to every 2 seconds. It's going to refresh the screen so that now you're getting the thumbnail screen captures again. As a teacher, I have the capability of showing my desktop to all of the students. So just like I'm showing you my desktop now through Skype, as a teacher I can show my desktop to all of my students so they can see something on my screen. In a wired environment, and I stress that this is right now only supported in wired, you can show a video. So you can actually stream a video from your system in real time, raw video from your system over to client systems. Right now, because of the bandwidth requirement, we only support this in a true wired environment. We are looking down the road at doing some HTML5 transcoding to be able to support wireless as well. But if you wanted to actually have a video sitting on the teacher's, system, you could play that out in a wired environment. You can create a replay file and then show that out to the students. So let's say you're a teacher and you know that you're going to be gone on Friday, but you have a proctor or a substitute coming in. You could actually record part of your lesson ahead of time and then post that so that the teacher can play that replay file out to your students. So, you don't want them to miss out just because you're going to be gone on Friday. You can have that proctor play that replay file and continue on with the lesson. The other thing you can do is create a replay file because some of your students are going to be gone on a big football, match, and they're going to be gone on Friday because there's a tournament. Well, again, you don't want to delay lessons for everyone just because some of your students are gone on a sporting event. You can actually record the lesson as you're going through it, create this replay file, and then you can even post that replay file as what's called an education resource to where that student can watch it offline. So they can actually get access to it and then watch it over the weekend, watch it when they come in on Monday so that they're not behind in class.
Charles, one question. How is this stored? Is this stored on the teacher's laptop, or could it be stored on a separate device, storage device, server or something? Cloud management?
Yeah. So by default, it is actually stored on the teacher's device. However, that can be changed using a default path switch, which is loaded in our Active Directory script. So in our Active Directory script, you can actually redirect it to where it stores those class replay files up on a SharePoint or at a different location.
Okay.
The teacher can show out an application to a student, so instead of showing just the entire desktop. Is there a question?
Yeah, just a quick question.
Yeah.
Well, that was a very Americanized version that you have to go off to a game and do homework later. I don't think that'll happen so much in Danish schools. It's a bit different. Anyway, I have a question in regards to something before. I was just browsing a little bit through it. Some of the, especially Chromebooks, have what we call a tattletale lamp on PCs today. How does this work with this program?
It does not today, so we don't support that today. We are actually looking at doing that. All it is really is that, it's a light, right, that tells you what's going on.
Yeah.
It's a very simple hardware call, and so it's on our roadmap to support to where you can actually control that light. We don't do it today, but it is definitely something we're looking at.
Okay.
So a couple of other things, the teacher, like I said, can show just an application. So if I just want to show, let's say, PowerPoint on my system, or I want to show just Corinth Classroom on my system but not show my entire desktop, I can do that by just showing application. I can also exhibit a student's application or a student screen. So I can click on, I can click on Exhibit and then select from the drop-down all of the students in my class, select out their desktop, and then show it with all the rest of the class. So if one of your students has done a really great job, you can reward them and show out what they've come up with to the rest of the class. I can send and receive homework. So I can set this up as part of my lesson plan to where I push out a file. So let's say we're going to be talking in science class today about rainbows, and we're going to talk about how water actually reflects light, and that reflection then shows you the different colors of the rainbow and how that happens. And maybe I have a great document, a great PDF learning module that I want to send out to you. Well, as part of my lesson plan that I've created, I can actually have this queued up, already waiting to go, and then all I have to do is send it. And it's going to ask me where I want to put it. And let's say I want to put it on your desktop. I'm going to push it out. It's going to go to your desktop, and then I'm going to get a receipt showing that you've gotten it. So right now, obviously, this works in Windows, Chrome. You can't push a file to. There's no hard drive storage. But on the Windows side, you can actually push a file straight from the teacher out and place it right on the student's desktop. The good part about this, and maybe this is an Americanized version of this as well, but the good part about this is now you don't get the excuse of, I couldn't get access to it from home, or I forgot to download it before I left class, or, I couldn't get into Google Classroom because I forgot my password. You already know that they've gotten it. So you push it out, you've got a receipt. The receipt is kept as part of the log file of the class, and you know now that they have gotten this file. And so you have a receipt showing that they've gotten it.
I think those excuses are worldwide.
I do too, as a matter of fact. So you can do that. The other thing you can do is, as I was mentioning, it's not always appropriate to have the device on, but you don't want to have them power it off either. So you can actually lock the device down, and when you lock it, a big blue lock shows up on the screen, and then they can't get out of it. The interesting thing is that every IT person always asks me this: what if they, hold down the power button and hard reboot? Well, guess what? That will actually get them out of class for a moment. So what will happen is the system will actually do the hard reboot by pushing the power button. The student will disappear out of the class. So instead of seeing a student with a big blue lock on your screen, you see a big hole where they used to be. Their device will reboot, but because we're running at the system level and not the user level, it remembers the last setting. So it'll automatically bring them right back up into the class, so they rejoin your class. And then the second thing is it will automatically lock you because that was the last setting that you were at. So you're now locked until the teacher unlocks you. So yes, you can actually reboot to get out of it, but you're only out of it temporarily until it brings you right back up into the class. So you can lock the device down, they can't use it, and then of course you can unlock the device so that they can use it again. I know that we're running short on time. I'm going to jump through a few of these. We do offer Language Lab capability, the ability to play an audio file or to speak to students using the microphone and headphones, where you're teaching maybe a foreign language and they're, repeating the words back to you, or they're reading from text and you're listening to them, monitoring them on how well they're doing. You can record one student or multiple students at a time and then play that audio file back. And again, you can communicate back and forth to them. So if they've not conjugated the verb properly, as you said, they're learning English. If they, are misusing the word the versus the and, other things like that, you can actually provide feedback back to them in real time using our Language Lab capability. We have what's called question and answer mode. This is actually kind of the fun game show mode, or the interactive engagement mode, to where you as the teacher can enter into this mode. You ask the students a question, and you say, okay, whoever's first to answer this question, you're going to get a star. And so I'm going to ask the question. You turn on everyone's sound. And it's important to have the sound on because it makes it more fun. And then whoever presses their space bar first, you hear them buzz in, and you hear the buzzer go off. And then you ask them if they know the right answer, and if they do, you give them a star. And then whoever has the most stars at the end of class, they win. But it's fun, and it's engaging, and it makes education actually more interactive by doing that. You can break them up into teams.
Jeopardy.
Exactly. It's exactly like Jeopardy. That's exactly right. You can do enter an answer to where I type in my answer, ahead of time. Maybe my answer is, Alexander Graham Bell or, some historical feature. And then whoever types in the answer to match mine first, you automatically win the star. So instead of having the buzzer, it's, type in an answer. I can do potluck or roll the dice. This is also really fun because you turn on everyone's sound in the class. You literally hear dice rolling through the class. So you kind of hear this dice rolling around the students' systems. Their screens randomly flash for a moment, and then it automatically picks someone. It's just, again, a fun way of keeping them engaged. You can break them up into teams, team first answer, or team enter an answer, left-hand side of the room versus right-hand side of the room, or group A, B, and C against each other, and then who gets the most stars for that group. So, again, it's just a different way of doing instruction. I mentioned that you can control by lesson, by class, and by day which websites the students have access to. So, again, you can limit it down. So, in my math class, I just want you to have access to a Khan Academy, video today or a Khan Academy lesson today that we're going to cover, and I don't want you to have access to anything else. So I can have as part of my lesson plans, again up here, you see this thing called lesson plans. I can have it automatically populate what approved websites we're going to use, and then click on approved only, and those are the only websites you can have access to now in my class. Or I can say, right now as part of the lesson, I don't want you to have any web access. I'm going to turn off all web access entirely and not allow you to get to the internet at all. And so, I kind of have that control at the click of a button and then can turn it back off whenever I need to. I can do the same thing for applications, so I can see which applications I want you to run in my class and restrict it down. And if you try to run any other application besides the one I've approved, it will tell you that it's been restricted for that class. The students are really smart. As I'm sure you guys know, students are really smart, right? So they'll start the application that they're not supposed to use before they come into class. So if they know they're not supposed to use YouTube, or they know they're not supposed to use Minecraft, or whatever the other application may be, they'll actually start it before class, and it will be running when the time the class starts. Well, that's great, but the teacher can actually see all of the running applications, and so they would see the icon and the name of every application that was running on that student's system. And then all the teacher has to do, and I'm going to actually go and run one of these applications over here, just so that you can see this momentarily. So I'm running an application. You'll see where now it's running Internet Explorer. I can right-click on it, and I can close that application. So if they're running Minecraft or if they're running YouTube, I can close it in a very nice, friendly way. I'm not killing it. I'm not losing any of their stuff, but I'm going to remote close it so that they're not distracted in my class. I can do summative assessment. Yes, sir.
No, it's just about to say all of this kind of wants me to go back to school.
Can you imagine, though, if they had this when we were all in school, we would all probably be in a lot more trouble than we were. So another thing is you can do summative assessment to where you have a question kind of written either ahead of time or maybe you come up with a question on the fly, and you're going to gauge whether the student is comprehending the material as you're going through it. So what you can do is, again, part of your lesson plan, have some questions kind of pre-typed up, or, in a math class, again, I can, write up an equation on the board, and then I can push that out, and I can say, okay, see the equation on the board, I'm going to push this out, I push send. All of my students now are going to get basically a one-question quiz, right, a really quick survey to see, can they tell me what the right answer is? And if they tell me that the answer is 155, and they come back and I'll see how many of the students answered 155, and I know that the answer is actually 3 because we're doing order of operations, right, what's inside the parentheses, what's outside the parentheses, all of that. If I know that they're not following along and they didn't grasp the concept, instead of just moving forward through the class and moving on to the next thing or continuing to expand on that, I'm going to pause and I'm actually going to go back and I'm going to revisit it. But let's say 155 was the right answer and 90% of my class got that right. Now I know, okay, I may have a couple who are questioning what's going on. I can work with them, later. I'm going to continue to move forward with the class. So I get a good survey of the entire class, not just the 1, 2, or 3 students who always raise their hand. I actually get to know now how well they're comprehending the material as we're going through it. And that's really powerful. Think about that as a teacher, to get a, kind of real-time look at comprehension and understanding as you're proceeding through the lesson. So that summative assessment is really, really important and valuable. Teachers can control which printers you have access to. So, if the student is moving from one room to another, they may have a list of several printers they have access to. Obviously, you don't want them printing 100 pages in, some classroom down the hall. You may not want them printing 100 pages, period, but you certainly don't want them printing it in another classroom. You can determine which which printers they have access to in your class, and you can even set this by default so that as soon as they join the class, that's the printer that they may have access to. You can determine if they can print duplicates or not, which means they can print more than one copy. You can block printing entirely, so they can't print at all, and then you can unblock it just at those times when you want them to be able to print a certificate or print something out so that they can use it or take it home. But this is actually a really good control. It's not HP Managed Print Services. We're not trying to compete with Managed Print Services, but it is a way for schools to save money on printing and to control when and how students use their printer devices. We allow you to set up chat groups, so you can come in here, create a group. You give it a name and a description, and it may be talking about historical figures again. It may be trying to solve mathematical problems. It could be trying to solve social studies problems or debating things that have happened in history. And what you can do is you can allow students to join a group. So you set up the groups, and then you can either assign the students to a group or allow them to join a group to where they can chat back and forth, collaborate back and forth, and then the teacher can monitor all of that. And it's really this collaboration in kind of chat format is great for students, because think about how students interact today. They don't talk to each other. They barely have a conversation, but yet they can communicate for hours, over their devices. This allows them to continue to have that kind of interactive communication in a format that they're very familiar with, but also allowing the teacher to have some control and monitor that. So that's a very valuable component to education. And, of course, then when you don't want them to chat and you want to turn it off, you just click on block and you've now turned off chat. They can't use it anymore. So, again, the teacher has some control over that. The teacher can control how you access your CD or DVD drive if you have an old system that still has that, how you access your USB ports, what kind of access you have to your USB ports. This is obviously important because you don't want a virus to automatically run, so you can block execute. You can only read write to it, but anything that's on there, you can actually block the execute of. You can mute and unmute sound on devices, and you can either do it by students. So if I just highlight one student, I can mute his or her sound, or I can leave it off and then just mute and unmute everyone's sound. I can track keywords in real time. So as they're typing, it will tell me if they've hit any of the good words or bad words. So on the positive side, that could be the grammar words of the week. The 20 grammar words of the week. I ask you to open up Notepad and type in your 20 grammar words of the week, and it'll tell me if you got them right. Or on the inappropriate side, it could be all the things that we don't like to think about that students sometimes do. Harassing, threatening, sexting with each other, or flirting or all of that stuff. You would be able to track that and make sure it's not a problem. In some countries, that's not a big deal. In some countries, that's even prohibited. In other countries, though, again, it's a safety concern now. As you're starting to watch what's going on in classes to make sure your students are safe, a lot of schools are seeing this as a way to prevent any kind of issue before it grows too large, so they can actually track that. And then last but not least, on the left-hand side is the ability to have, again, this kind of graphical format through a whiteboard. Now, this whiteboard can be shared with all of the class, so everyone has access to it and can pass the marker back and forth. You can create, again, groups of students of 3 or 4, give them their own whiteboard, and they can collaborate together on that whiteboard. Or you can even give each individual student their own whiteboard and let them work on it. But the whiteboard is just, like any other kind of draw, Microsoft Draw or Paint that you've ever worked with, where you can, just take the marker. Again, math works really well. You put up an equation and say, what's it going to look like? Somebody raises their hand, you give them the marker, and they say, oh, I think the equation is going to look like that. When you graph it out, somebody else raises their hand, you give them the marker, they draw, and they say, no, based on the equation, I think it's going to look more like that. And then you have a conversation. Well, why does some of the class think this? Why does some of the class think that? And that's where true learning and education happens, is that debate. Why do you think this? Why is the answer this way? And graphically, this works great. You can't do this really well with a keyboard. So, and I've seen some students come up with incredible, Rube Goldberg flows of, really elaborate solutions. And you allow the student to get very creative in a very graphical way. They can save off the file so they can save the whiteboard. And then when they come in tomorrow, they can actually load that. And they can continue to work on it. So once they've saved a whiteboard, they can come back the next day, it'll open up to back up, and you can continue to work on your whiteboard session. So you don't have to worry about the custodian at the end of the day erasing the whiteboards, when they come in to clean the class. So you have that kind of capability as well. I know we're a little over time. Do you guys have a few more minutes you can stay?
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Okay. Because I want to make sure we just get to a couple of other things. One is the ability, like I said, to remote launch applications or remote launch websites. So, again, based on your lesson plan, you could have the 3 or 4 websites that you plan to use as part of your lesson kind of queued up. They're in a queue as part of this quick launch. And then when it comes time to use them, again, instead of telling your students to all go to Khan Academy, now I'm going to push out that URL. So I'm going to double click on it. If I jump over to the student side, you're going to notice it opens up the default browser and it takes me to whatever that web page is. And I can get very deep into web pages. So it doesn't have to just be the main root of the web page, khanacademy.org. It could be khanacademy.org /algebra grade 2 whatever, and it will tell me exactly, it'll let me get, very far down into it and launch that that website remotely on that student's device. So they don't have to navigate to it. If they've already got an account with Khan, since you're supposed to have an account, it'll actually remember that so that you don't have to sign in again, take you straight to that lesson, and then you can proceed on with it. There's a lot of great web pages out there. It's called OER content, or online education resources, that teachers could be able to use and should be able to use without having to, have the student try to navigate to find it. So this makes it really easy to use that material, push it out, open it up on the student's device, and then allow them to use it. I can do the same thing, by the way, with an application. So again, maybe it's Microsoft Paint, or maybe it's OneNote, but I can actually push that out as well, and then obviously it's going to open that up on the student side. So I have that kind of capability of being able to do that. And then the last thing I want to show you is just these lesson plans themselves. So you have the ability to come in and create your own lesson plan. And what we normally do when we work with schools, when I train teachers or I work with teachers directly, is that we work with them on how to create basically a template of your lesson plan. Because basically, you do the same thing every class, right? You kind of do it in the same order, basically. And so you kind of create this template plan. And then what you do is after you've got your template started, then you just go in and you modify it for whatever you're going to do on a specific day. And so you add the websites you're going to use. You may add your 2 or 3 or 4 survey questions. You may decide that you're going to push out a quiz that you've already pre-written. You may decide that they're not going to have any web access based on that lesson that day. And so then you start to modify the template, and then you save it off. And then when you save it, and I'll show you what that looks like, it's just this flat file. It's this nice little NPL file, or NLP rather, file that's very small, very flat, that they now can load up and execute as part of their lesson plan. So it doesn't take a lot of space. It's actually pretty easy to maintain once you start to get used to it, and it makes it very easy for the teacher because it's just a list of what they're going to do that day. It's already got it all queued up, ready for them to go, and then they just start to go through it as they're going through their lesson for that day. It doesn't do anything automatically. So meaning it's not going to, at 10 past the hour, automatically lock everyone's system. Just because at 10 past the hour, you said you were probably going to lock systems. It reminds you that that was the next thing that's coming up on the list, but it just doesn't go through and go, yep, I'm going to lock everyone's system now, or I'm going to remote launch a web page on everyone's device at 25 past the hour. Because, school doesn't run that way. It's not, run on time. But it does allow them to quickly and easily use the tool without having to remember which buttons to click and all this navigation stuff. So I really promote the use of the lesson plans because all the teachers now that I'm working with, they find it very valuable. So lesson plans are great. And then the other thing just to push out there, and this is for you guys as well as for Paolo himself. I just want to also promote that we have this amazing users guide, and it's not your typical users guide. So your typical users guide that you get with a piece of software is this big thick PDF or printed material, and you have to kind of wade your way through it and try to figure out what you want to find. What this actually is it's broken down by task. So it's very easy to quickly find what you're looking for. So if you need installation help, great. We have every way you could possibly install the software, and you can get your installation help. If you're a teacher and you want to know how to use the software, you can come down and click on Using HP Classroom Manager. And I just want to know today, how do I do audio monitoring? That's the only thing I care about today. I've got it figured out. I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and it's going to take me just to how to do auto monitoring, and then take me to the subsequent follow-up documents if there are any. So you may see some at the bottom, how to do different things. But now you don't have to read this huge manual and go figure it out, and it's very task-based. 1, 2, 3 pages, or maybe at the most, of how to do something. You learn how to do just that task, and then you move on. So it's very easy to be able to navigate and configure. Don't have to read a huge thing. We love our manual. It's used a lot in some countries, and in some countries we don't seem to get use out of it. It is fully localized. It's not in English for every language. If the UI is localized, the manual is also localized. So it should be very easy to use for the teachers to, again, find what they want to do without reading this huge, piece of material.